Hi there, everyone. I hope you all are doing well. So, my name is Saransh, and today I'm going to represent what is Far North Ontario Land Use Planning. And there are other two members, Parth Gandhi and Vishu Suthar. We are going to accommodate me after some time. So, let us quickly start what is there. I'm going to share my screen. There you go. So, today we are going to discuss about Far Northern Ontario Land Use Planning. Here are the contents which we are going to cover up. First, we will start with introduction. Then, what is the framework? What is the processes? How it works? What are the associated acts and regulations? What are the community-based plannings? What are the joint planning process? And finally, the related job alongside with the reference. So let us quickly start with the introduction. So let's commence with what is Far North, first of all. So the Far North is a area which is on the northern part of the Ontario, and the rules and regulation, or the, I can say, the planning which is done for its development, uh, for its across all its area in the Far North, is known as the Far North Ontario Planning. This planning is applicable to all of its geographical areas, but it does include numerous municipalities, First Nations, and also the provincial properties. As as itself, it says that it does not include a lot of municipalities. So the zoning is being done by the planning board as well as the Ministry of the Municipal Affairs and Housing. It also acts as an aid for issues outside the control of the planning areas, and also within the planning areas. So one question is that why, like, the North Ontario land use planning is different from the southern one. So there are basically three basic reasons. So first is the municipal structure. And if you see in the southern part of Ontario, the each and every city is having the municipality, but in some part of the northern Ontario, it is lacking. Second is the crown land, of course, is the First Nations land. And the last one is the far distance in between the northern and the southern communities. It's like they barely meet each other, and all the rituals, the traditions, the culture, they are completely different in both southern and the northern Ontario. So it's the reason why it differs from southern land use planning. So second is the framework. So basic meaning of framework is like what is the core structure of it. So the core thing is that, like, it's also the integral part. So it is a community-based plan, right? Whatever they are planning is, of course, it is based for the communities, the northern communities. First of all, it is for the guidance and the support, right? So that's the reason we have like included the far north use development approach is always for community, and the community is always responsible to make the laws and to how to develop them, how to make it in proper function and everything. Third is how the process works. It's a 7-step process basically. So first is among them is how the plan is prepared. uh as the as it is based for the community, the plan is being made by the joint planning team, right? So this joining planning team is made by the ministers. So that's why the second step itself says that the minister form the planning team. And the first step, the plan is prepared, right? The plan, like, a proper structure of the plan is being made by the ministers, and then they form the joint planning team to start the work for this plan, right? Then after, they in the third step, they says that they made the goals, like what are the basic aim of it, and then a procedure has been made to create a plan which is always for the community based plan. It is always for their prosperity, for their development, and always they keep in mind that it is by permitted by the terms of reference. Fourth is that, let us consider that they are going to develop a specific area. Let us consider that. So what they do that if they have made a plan, the ministers have made the joint planning team. They what they basically do that if certain area has going to be developed, they take the proper knowledge around the land, what is culture, what is the science, what is the geographical locations, each and everything is documented and it is presented. Fifth step is say that a public feedback. Always like whatever uh, development is being done, the public uh, feedback has to be taken. Of course, there are many indigenous communities living in the far north, so everything should be taken into consideration. And also in the fifth step, they say that the public feedback is providing the final stages. So final stages mean that like uh, pre-draft plan is known as a final stages plan. Then after they made a proper draft plan, that is a second last stage of the final plan. In this draft plan, they usually approve the activities, what are like development is going to be done, how many houses in a row, how many skyscrapers has to be done, and a land use is being prepared. And finally, in the seventh step, this says that the provincial government accepts the plan if they consider that it is not having any community, it is not having any natural resources, not its science, its culture, the knowledgeable tradition, everything. If it's positive response, then after they go for the approval of the plan, and once the plan is approved, they post this online through the Ministry of Housing and Affairs. But if they are rejecting it, they are again going to redevelop a plan. They always make sure in mind that whatever the plan they are preparing, it is like it should give some proper and specific and helpful outcomes. So that was how it process forms. So
Hi, my name is Parth, and today I'm going to talk about Act and Regulation in Far North Land Planning. So I'm going to share my screen with PowerPoint presentation. So the Far North was legalized by the government in 2010, and it is enacted basically for conserving the ecological and cultural value in Northern Ontario. So the land use planning, which Ontario Ministry of Northern Development, Mines, Natural Resources and Forestry oversees land use planning, and regional plans are developed to guide growth and developments while considering environmental and community needs. It also has objective like protected areas. In Northern Ontario contains several protected areas such as provincial parks, conservation reserves, and wilderness areas, which these are the designated to preserve natural habitat and biodiversity. So it has prominent role of indigenous community too, because due to significant indigenous community in far north area, the government engaged in meaningful consultation and collaboration with indigenous group in the land planning processes. Later, I'm going to talk about community-based planning, which is initiated by First Nation, which collaborated by Ontario government itself. As I mentioned earlier, this process determined how land will be developed good in to use for future to maintain people and their resources. So the infrastructure development is done by government and the indigenous people. So they assess the overall planning and they implement whole process, and they after regulated joint process. So later I'm going to talk about the whole process, in which first they took assessment of regional area, in which they conduct comprehensive assessment of the ecological, culture and economical characteristic of the region to inform land use planning processes. In joint planning processes, engaging with indigenous people and the stakeholder, which is also be a public of that respective land, and the Ministry of Ontario understand the perspective and priorities and the aspiration for the far north land. And after that, the land use planning was take place to develop land use plans that balance conservation, economic value, and cultural value while considering the need of indigenous community, because they does not want to mitigate the development of their respective land, and they want to enhance the land of that respective land with provincial uh, implication and growth of that sustainable development of their respective land. And after implementation and planning took place, in which through regulatory measures, monitoring their effectiveness and making necessary adjustment through adaptive management, they implement the whole process and the planning. Later, I am going to carry forward to the Vishrut Sudhar, which will talk about the example of this joint planning process. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Vishnu Sudha. As part explained before, the whole process, that's the joint planning process. I will give example for that, which will make a clear idea about the whole process. So moving forward, this is the North Spirit Lake First Nation Chief and the Council. That's the indigenous community. While this is the Minister of Natural Resources and Forestry. That's a people of Ontario. So the indigenous community makes a group named as a community advisory group, while the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry makes a group named as provincial advisory group. So these two groups, along with one more group, that is a technical support group. So all these three groups work in a collaboration and make a team called as a planning team. So people working in this team are land use planning coordinator, land use planning technician, economic development officer, counselor, MNRF Far North planner, and many more. So now talking about the related jobs. So people working in a field of as a GIS data technician, regional planner, environmental consultant, indigenous relations advisor, planner, and there are many much more which are not mentioned in this. These all the field jobs are somehow are somehow contributing in this act. And why I am specifically talking about these jobs, because as we are the students of the program, the environmental land management, we can get a chance to work in any of these fields, and by working in this field we can somehow can contribute in this act, that's the Far Northern Ontario Plan Act. Now talking about the final conclusion, now we came to know that the main motto of this act, it's the main focus of this act is the good being or the welfare of the ecology and some important values of the Northern Ontario, like the cultural values of the Northern Ontario. So, and this act is applicable to the whole Northern Ontario, except few places, except some exceptions like some municipalities, some First Nations and personal properties where this act is not applicable. In this, both the people of Ontario as well as the indigenous community, that's the indigenous people, both work collaboratively and make this act run effectively. So this act works by a collaborative sequence of a joint planning process. So the whole joint planning process was explained by the part, and it was clearly understood by the example which I gave just before this. And as mentioned, there are several jobs associated with this act for the application of this act, in which we can work, in which we can get a chance to work and can contribute in this act. Here are the references from where we took the information for the whole PPT. And at last, thank you so much.